everybody. It's Weird Islanders, the podcast, back once again. My name is Dan. That is Mike. How are you this evening, Mike?
I'm good. We of course record these all in advance. So it's a an ironic episode, I guess, to talk about because the season which we're gonna highlight is
Insane.
It was crazy.
Yeah.
And it was the Islanders the season before needed, a new voice. They got one. In Jack Capuano. And it feels like a good time to be talking about this season, and then this player who is one of a few, very few, a very select few who went from someone I despised to someone that I really came around to loving as an Islander. And yeah, there's a lot to unpack with him, even though his time on the island was pretty short, and the teams he played on were wholly unremarkable.
Yeah. Definitely a lot to unpack. Definitely a very interesting guy with a long backstory. And as we just said, the main season in which he played for the Islanders, of really just two, which is kind of surprising when you think about it, was packed to the gills with events, crazy, both before the season, during the season, and after the season. We're going to talk about all that with our guest, our good friend. He's been on this show before, Nick Giglia. Nick, what's going on?
Hey guys, I'm doing really well. Really appreciate the opportunity to keep coming on.
How does it feel to be the first 3-time guest on Weird Islanders, the podcast?
The Kip Miller,
Yes,
of
right.
Weird Islanders.
I feel like you couldn't get Art for the third time first.
He's busy. He's very busy
these days. Sounds like I have more time on my hands than Art does.
Most of us do. Art is a very busy man at this time. No, but we love having you on. And you were the one who, I forget when you wanted to. We talked about this, but this was a guy you had put dibs on basically during one of your other appearances, and you wanted to get to him. And so I'm glad that we were able to schedule this for now. And so I don't want to waste any more time. So Nick Giglia, will you please reveal the subject of tonight's episode of Weird Islanders, the podcast?
Absolutely. Number 6 overall, 2004. Number 35 in your programs. Number 1 in your hearts. El Cubano Grande, Al Montoya.
Sí, el único El Cubano Grande, the one and only. I asked my wife, how do you say the one and only in Spanish? Because we're doing the Al Montoya episode tomorrow. She's like, oh yeah, because she knows how much I love this guy. Real quick before we dive into all this, reminder that we are on Patreon, patreon.com/Islanders Anxiety. You get ad-free episodes of this show and Islanders Anxiety, plus bonus podcasts, written posts, and a whole lot more. So check us out on Patreon, patreon.com/Islanders Anxiety. Okay.
Absolutely. It is much better country club atmosphere than the team right now.
I hope so. That's our goal, and much better $5 spent than the spending $1 a month at the Athletic. That's my other goal.
Yeah.
So let's get right to it. So you were the one that came to us and we're like, I want to definitely do an episode on Montoya, and I was like, absolutely, because I can't wait to do this. So what is it about Montoya? We're gonna unpack everything. So don't worry about getting too granular right now. But like, what was it about Montoya to you that makes him stand out during his very short run with the Islanders?
Yeah, I mean, Al Montoya it's a couple different things for me. First of all, the 2010-11 season, I think we can all agree, was just absolutely bonkers.
Yes.
They were by far the most entertaining of those terrible Islander teams in that stretch. I think I've said this before. This was the referendum season. Yeah. This was the season before I met my wife, which means this is basically the last time that the Islanders were number one in my mental pecking order on some level. So I feel like I'm kind of, the season's encased in amber in my mind. Yeah. And just Al Montoya himself, just the specific weird twists and turns, and how he even got to be an Islander, and how he got to have a semi-productive NHL career. It's fascinating to me.
Yeah, definitely took a circuitous route to the NHL and to the Islanders. Mike, as I think about this season, and I've been thinking about it all day, I really wish we had done the podcast this year, because I feel like this would have been a packed season to do. And then I was like, wait, Mike probably would have been, what, 21 or 22 while this was all going on?
This was my junior year of college, this season in 2010, 2011. So having it all unfold in that environment and in that part of your life. I remember where I was the fight night game. I think I've told the story that we were at a bar called Tommy's. Actually, it was in Bridgeport.
Oh, wow.
And I don't want to admit publicly how the night ended, because it ended with us stealing a bunch of beer from the bar. Like maybe all the adrenaline from the fight night.
Yeah. Made you feel invincible.
We saw these cases of beer being unloaded from a truck, and I guess you know how some unions have rules where they can't like take the beers or the cargo from put it away. They can only unload it. I think it was one of those deals, because there was just all this beer lying about that was not yet put into the bar, and we helped ourselves. But I think that this season, it's a shame that they were so mediocre in terms of their win-loss, because it would have just being able to ride with this team into the playoffs would have been just so much fun, considering Montoya was one of 5 goalies they played that year, or 6.
Yes.
6 goalies, and here's the best part: 6 goalies and 42 players graced the ice for the Islanders that year.
Including the 3 random PTOs at the end of the season to fill out the roster.
Yes. Yeah, there were Matt Campanelli, Jamie Dornbush,
and Shane Sims, who I think Sims was like a 2006 5th or 6th round pick of the Islanders. Went to Ohio State.
This was a crazy, crazy year. I was already an old married guy by this point. My daughter was 1. I remember where I was watching the fight night game. I was on my couch watching Real Housewives of New York City at the same time, and I was watching the fight night in the picture-in-picture. And every time I glanced down from whatever Luann and Sonia were arguing about, I was like, "What the hell is going on in that game?" Every time I looked down, there's never any goals; it's just fights, or goals and fights. That's about it.
I think I stayed up until 2 a.m. decompressing from that game.
It was almost like, we were in a fight too. So before we get to Montoya and his crazy route to the Islanders, let's talk about this season, because again, before the season started, things were already completely off the rails, because this was the season people out there may remember that Mark Streit and Kyle Oposo both got hurt in training camp.
I was at the scrimmage where this happened.
Oh my God. So he got hit by Matt Molson,
He got hit from behind by Matt Molson.
Yeah.
And my friend Andrew, who is going to appear a couple of other times in this, just because there are a couple of things that definitely came up. We were both there, and we were just standing there in disbelief. And, I don't know about using bad language on this or not, but I know that Andrew...
Go right ahead.
Andrew kept saying, "What a fucking idiot!" We were just so dumbfounded that would happen. And then you had Dion Phaneuf. Somebody shoved Oposo from behind at center ice. Phaneuf hits him in the head. Pascal Morency comes off the bench to try to get Phaneuf. And Oposo has a concussion. So, I mean, before the season was over, before it even started, because 2 of the best players on the team are going to be out for an extended period of time.
Yeah. Streit missed the whole season, and Oposo came back about halfway through. So he played 38 games.
It was a separated shoulder, I think, for Streit, or as I like to call it, the Dale Hunter special.
Oh God!
That essentially scuttled their season right from the get-go. Streit was like pretty much that. Him and Tavares were their 2 best players, basically.
Yeah, the season was over.
It set the tone too. Like like I said, 42 different players came in, and that started in the preseason. And the when you look at this roster too, you'll have like the emerging core, the Travis Hamonic and Josh Bailey. Franz Nielsen in his prime, Tavares is 20 at the time. Then you had the waiver wire, the AHL career journeyman pickups like Parenteau and Molson that were clicking. But then you had the usual Gar Snow. These are my, his mob of veterans that he would always bring in. And this group was great with Mark Eaton, I believe was he this year or the next year?
No, he was this year. 34 games.
Mike Motto, the Snow Angel himself.
Motto, Juice Urchina.
Yep.
Was there.
He was
anomaly.
And even Rolison was 41 on this team. He was 41. He was playing on this version of the Islanders as a 41-year-old. His birth date, it looks so weird now to see it. To see someone with a 60, well, he's at 69, but to see someone born in the 60s on an NHL roster, because it's just been so long now. But he was 41 on this team.
I also remember. I remember when the Islanders signed Dwayne Rolison. I was watching NHL Network because I was single and I hate myself. I don't even know.
I'm shocked you had an NHL Network back then. I never even had it.
They got Rolison to come on NHL Network and tried to get him to talk up signing with the Islanders, and he wouldn't do it.
Yeah.
He just kept saying, only one team offered me a second year. That was literally the best he could say is, only one team offered me a second year.
Sounds about right.
He couldn't bring himself to say anything different about the team, and it's just it makes you think about that bird where they would put the gravel in his beak in the Flintstones, just going, "It's a living."
When he signed with the Islanders, I was working at a deli at Associated Supermarket, and the union guys all got 15-minute smoke breaks every once in a while, and I wasn't a union person, but because I was just there for the summer. But I was like, I'm taking my smoke break because the Islanders just signed Dwayne Rolison, and I gotta work this out in my head.
That's pretty funny.
So what a season, what a roster. Perfect coach for this roster too, I think, in Capuano.
Well, hold on before you get there. I was going to say.
Yes,
so they lose two of their better players in training camp. They pick up a guy in Michael Grabner off of waivers just at the start of the season. He's going to end up having a 34-goal season. He's going to be a finalist for the Calder Trophy. We're going to talk about him because he's going to appear in Al Montoya's first game in a few minutes. Has this incredible breakout season. You mentioned Parenteau and Molson before, who are also, kind of cheap boy pickups that Gar Snow excelled at. But 18 games into the season. No, sorry. 17 games into the season, the Islanders are going nowhere. This was one of the classic Woe-vembers that we've seen where they went, 10 or 12 games with a loss in November. Scott Gordon, who had been signed the year before, the young coach out of the AHL, is out. And in his place is called up from Bridgeport a Husky, Jack Capuano. And at first you're like, really? This is the guy that they're going to, use here? But believe it or not, the players actually really took to Capuano. He was a player's coach. They liked him. He got them he got the losing streak ended, and then he got them turned into sort of the right direction. They started winning games improbably. I mean, the season was essentially over, but they did win games.
Yeah, I mean, I think what happened there, we all heard about the vaunted Gordon overspeed system.
Yes.
And it really seems like, and I've heard people who, this is all third hand at this point, but it seemed like it was almost too much structure.
Yeah.
It seemed like this whole overspeed system, it's like they were trying to do too much. And it was just there was just so many different inputs that they were stuck thinking, what am I supposed to do in this situation instead of reacting to the play?
Especially young team led by a 20-year-old John Tavares, a 19-year-old John Tavares. Like it wasn't really working. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Some guy.
The funny thing about Capuano, I don't know if either of you were there. This must have been, it was like 2008 or 2009. Chris Botta had a viewing party for an Islanders Thrashers game at a bar in Rockville Center.
Jeez, that sounds like
the guests were Richard DiPietro, Rick's father, Justin Bourne and Brianna Gillies, and Cappy, who was coaching Bridgeport at the time.
Oh, man. Oh, we should have asked Justin Bourne about
literally,
that.
like, I said hello to Cappy briefly, and my friend who was with me was like, who the hell is that random guy? Like, oh, that random guy coaches our AHL team. You know, it's
he doesn't look like a hockey coach in that situation.
Major League Two here. You know, who are they? They are our center fielder.
Yeah, Capuano would fit right in a bar in Rockville Center, and like just the look.
He was wearing a leather jacket.
Yeah, exactly. He probably was at one bar across the street, and he's like, I gotta wrap up my tab here because I gotta go across the street for this event. Who are you?
Yeah, exactly. So, as you mentioned before, the Islanders do use 6 goalies this year, including Dwayne Rollison, who started the majority of the first bunch of games, and DiPietro as well. But then in January, they trade Rollison to the Tampa Bay Lightning, who would go to the Eastern Conference Final that year. So there's one guy out, and they try and make
Ty dependable like a Maytag Wishart.
Yeah, right. Yeah, they got Ty Wishart out of it.
Can I ask you 2 random questions, by the way, about the Islanders goalies before we jump in?
That's what we're here for.
Do you guys know who played the most games in goal for the Islanders this season?
Well, I'm looking at Hockey Reference right now, so
I know, and we recorded an episode about. Now this will be the second of these 6 goalies, and so I know who it is.
So I mean, DiPietro played the most games that year, 26, and Al Montoya led the team in wins.
Unbelievable. With 9.
But
9.
Yes, you're right. I mean, this is when Rollison gets traded, and then it's almost like they're the proverbial Jack Edwards snipers in the rafters, going after the Islander goalies. Because I mean, the thing that was interesting about these goaltenders is, I mean, you had a lot of guys who were called up before their time. Kevin Poulin, who always interested me. Kevin Poulin, the most interesting thing for me is he gets drafted in the 5th round in 2008. They ask him in his first training camp what it's like, and he said something about hopefully I can push DiPietro, who at the time had just started the All-Star game.
Yeah.
But he starts, he has a fairly decent go of things, and then right before a game in February against I think it's February, but right before a game against the Leafs, it's I think February 7th, he hits a divot in the crease and tears up his knee.
It was the Senators, I believe, and he tore his kneecap.
Okay. And then so now Mikko Koskinen has to make his NHL debut, and Joel Ward gets sent down from Bridgeport in a limo. Not Joel Ward, Joel Martin. I'm sorry, Joel Martin.
Joel Martin, yeah.
Right. I'm very sorry. Yeah, that's all right. On me.
Yeah, no, but this was the way this season went. Like they couldn't keep a goalie in particular healthy, and it was just a disaster. And again, Rick wasn't healthy. Rollison, the funny thing about Rollison, real quick before we move on, is that he was 6-13-1 before he got traded, which is a terrible record, but he had a .916 save percentage. And so the idea was that this guy is way better than this crappy team, and maybe he can go help somebody. And so he ended up helping the Lightning pretty well.
Can I ask you guys something? And maybe you've already covered this. I apologize in a past episode. Rollison was definitely the guy who said it's a country club in there, right?
It certainly sounds
like we don't know, but it was Rollison, right?
It would make sense. I mean, who would you point the finger at in this situation when you're looking for a guy that fits a certain age profile?
It was probably either him or Wisniewski, who was another veteran who was then traded.
A friend of mine talked about how she ran into Garth right after Rollison got traded. And made a comment about how he shouldn't have done it. He said, if I didn't, his teammates would have killed him.
That sounds about right. We may do a Rollison episode at some point because again, interesting cat who was only around for a little while. But within all this, but I'm glad you mentioned the Kevin Poulin thing. So for a little while, it's Poulin and Koskinen. Rollison's gone. DiPietro's hurt, and then Poulin gets hurt, and so Koskinen gets the run of things for 4 or 5 games. One of which is, of course, the legendary Fight Night game in February of 2011. But just before that game, Garth Snow realizes I need another goalie because Kevin Poulin is hurt. And so
Nate
we
Lawson
finally get
too. Nate Lawson was
yes,
sucking
he
it
also
up
played.
somewhere in there too.
So on February 9th of 2011, again, this is after Poulin got hurt, but before the fight night game. I guess Lawson was probably on the bench for that fight night game. Garth Snow makes a trade for another goal, a goalie who is looking for a place to play. His general manager will say that he traded him to the Islanders as a favor to Al because he was kind of toiling away in the AHL. He was backing up, I think, in the AHL, and he deserved more. I guess the Coyotes were awash in goalies back then, and so he got traded. But now we finally get to our guest of honor, Alvaro Montoya, drafted by the Rangers in the first round, 2004, number 6 overall.
For our first selection in the entry draft, we're pleased to select from the University of Michigan, goaltender Al Montoya.
There's 2 highly rated goaltenders for this draft, Marek Schwartz from the Czech Republic and Al Montoya, who was a gold medal winner with the U.S. World Junior Team, Bob.
He's got $1 million personality. He's got a hug from his mom, Irene Silva. Interesting story. First player of Cuban descent to be taken in the first round of the playoffs. In the early 1960s, his mother's family had lots of money. There was a window of opportunity where if they traded in everything they owned in Cuba, Castro would let some of them go to America, and that's how they made their way first to Miami and then to Chicago. A guy who grew up in the Chicago Young American system, played football and hockey. At the age of 14, decided that he loved hockey, started missing football practices to be at hockey practices. That's when he made a commitment, and he won the World Junior Championship with the Americans, and a good player at the University of Michigan.
This kid has charisma. His teammates love him and play hard for him. The Rangers feel they have help coming on defense from their farm team with Tootin, a forward they traded for named Blay. We've got another defenseman, Hugh Jessman from Dartmouth on the way. Now they're taking the goaltender.
Hey, Brian, you're being too kind. You're overrating a lot of those prospects that the Rangers have. This is a serious gamble. Montoya athletically can do the job, but I cannot believe they didn't take a player like Lauri Tukinen, like Thielen from Michigan State, like Rostislav Oles. There's so many holes in the team. Now you look at Dan Blackburn, what's going to happen to him? Now you look at Mike Dunham, what's going to happen to him? The Rangers not in a position really to need a goalie right now. I'll predict this right now. Al Montoya will not be playing for the New York Rangers because when Glenn Sather's there. I don't think Glenn Sather will be there when Al Montoya is playing for the Rangers.
2 slots after Islanders legend Andrew Ladd.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean this draft is littered with Islanders legends here. And the first round is Corey Schneider, Zajac. Yeah, like it's this is a good one. Yeah, Ladd.
Yeah.
Nokalainen, who was the Islanders pick.
I was going to say who the Islanders actually
Rob
took.
Schrempf.
Blake Como in the second round.
Yeah.
Great pick. Yeah. And this is why I hated Al Montoya to start. Because not only was he a Ranger, but this felt like the Rangers were looking for their own Rick DiPietro, who I at the time loved. Right. High profile.
Right.
American goalie.
Right. Out of
first
college
round
system.
Pick. Yep. Yeah. College.
Which is interesting because he was an overage pick in 2004. If you look at his date of birth, he's a February of 85. So he's a little older than me. So he played, he played the 02-03 season. He played the 02-03 season in Michigan as a true freshman, an 18-year-old. And then he plays in 03-04 and he gets drafted. So I think it's also interesting that his stats in his freshman year weren't that different. And he goes from undrafted to 6th overall.
I think it was the Rick thing. I to this day will argue that they drafted this guy this high as an answer to Rick. They're like, we needed a Rick. And they didn't know they had.
The Rangers weren't that far removed from taking Dan Blackburn 10th overall.
Yeah, the two blocker legend. And then he fights Rick.
Yes, yeah, in a preseason game. So Montoya leaves school early to join the Rangers, which really rubbed Red Berenson the right way. But it took very little to get Red Berenson very angry at you, and he did not sound happy that Montoya was leaving early, but he did. And there was a big fight in a preseason game. There was a big brawl. DiPietro, of course, is not afraid to grab anybody and start throwing hands, and down the ice comes Al Montoya.
The puck past DiPietro. Now he wants more. Skating down the left wing side. Rolls one to DiPietro. Kicks it away. And over to the near corner. Now Simon lines up Holweg. Hits him from behind. And a fight breaks out away from the play. Simon and Holweg wrap up with each other. Strudwick and Colliton wrestling with each other as well in the left circle. Simon's got the left hand free. He's trying to punch Holweg. And now a big scrum. And DiPietro gets in there for the Islanders. Rick DiPietro in the middle of it. Trying to get a hold of one of the Rangers. That's Strudwick. Brian Berard pulls a Ranger down to the ice. Freddie Myers got a hold of his man, and all the way down the ice comes Al Montoya. He's going to fight Rick DiPietro, or is he? DiPietro's got the glove and blocker off as well as the face mask. Montoya doesn't want to do it. Fans cheering him on. Montoya, what's he going to do? He will take the mask off, and here go the goaltenders. They're fighting. DiPietro and Al Montoya. DiPietro, a left hand, heavy left hand from DiPietro. Now both goalies go down to the ice. DiPietro back up to his skates. He wants more, gets a little jab in. Montoya down. Both referees now have to get in and smother that. And it looks like everybody's calmed down. The linesmen were doing their thing in the near circle to try to get players to the box, as if there's any room down there. Unbelievable. A line brawl takes place here at the Nassau Coliseum, and it involves the goalies. DiPietro will get a roar from the fans here at the Nassau Coliseum as DP, as you hear the chants in the background, lost his jersey, and he'll acknowledge the crowd.
DiPietro really won that fight pretty decisively. You know,
Montoya, I don't think Al was.
Montoya didn't want to do it. This was a whole
it's a preseason game
because I mean, to be fair here, like it was pretty provocative that the first preseason game against the Rangers after the Ryan Holweg incident, the Islanders dressed Chris Simon. So yeah. I don't know if it was a good thing or a bad thing because it got it out of the system, and they kept trying to go after Simon, and then just as part of that whole fracas, Montoya comes down. Rick's already got the gloves off, and he's and he got beaten up pretty good, and for a little while that was his kind of calling card.
Yeah, sadly.
This is part two of why I hate Al Montoya, because this fight. I was in high school when this fight happened, and I had to see in the early stages of I don't even know if YouTube was around yet, but like whatever online video sharing you could do. I always had to see the Dan Cloutier fight.
Oh my god!
Tommy Sallow. So
on my birthday.
Oh my god! And so I thought that this was a good response. Like that Rick was doing this to erase that from our memories, but then it didn't carry any water because it was a preseason fight. And it was a player who ends up playing 0 games for the Rangers.
Right.
Somehow.
So the somehow turned out to be Henrik Lundqvist, who at the same time that Montoya leaves Michigan to come play for the Rangers already have, and without really any kind of getting his feet wet at all, immediately becomes one of the best starting goaltenders in the league, and sets the Rangers up for the next 2 decades in goal, or a decade and a half in goal, which is pretty wild. So Montoya, through no fault of his own, really ends up in Bridgeport for a long time. Like he ends in 3 or 4 seasons in in Hartford, because they just had no other place to put him. And I guess they had like veteran backup after veteran backup, and Kevin Weeks was in there. I think Steve Valiquette might have been in there at that point. I don't even know who else. Kirk McLean, I think, might have been in there. I don't even know. But I'm not going to go through a whole list of Rangers backup goalies. You can check me on that. I don't care. But, eventually he ends up getting traded to the Phoenix Coyotes, who at that point are their general manager is Don Maloney, who, of course, was an Islanders general manager, but was also the Rangers assistant general manager when Montoya was selected. He's actually the guy who makes the selection to take Montoya in that draft. So he must have had an affinity for him, and he ends up picking him up for the Coyotes for a 5th round pick, along with a bunch of guys go to the Rangers, Josh Gratton, David Lenovo, and Frederick Sjostrom. Leneveu, excuse me. They all go to the Rangers for Montoya and Marcel Hossa, the other Hossa, not Marion, the other, his brother. And but then Montoya gets to Phoenix, and he can't really do anything there either, because I think they have Ilya Brizgalov.
They did have Briz, yeah.
Yeah.
Michael Telquist was their backup at that point.
Okay, so, but he ends up playing for the Phoenix Roadrunners. I think he ended up in the ECHL for a while there, or, one of those. Still cannot get any traction whatsoever in terms of playing on an NHL roster. And it's none of this is his fault. Like, he's playing okay in these places. He just can't get that opportunity. So that was in 2008 that he got traded to the Coyotes. So 2004 to 2008, he can't get a spot for the Rangers. 2008 to 2011, he can't get a spot with the Coyotes.
He did get 5 NHL games in, but that's about it.
Yeah, that's not much at all. And he ended up, he actually goes 3-1 in those 5 games. But again, he just can't get a spot. And so here come the New York Islanders, this dreaded wasteland of a team in desperate need of a goalie forever. And now they pick one up. And so there's the fight night game. Koskinen wins it through, although I'm sure he didn't really do, they won 9-3, right? Or 9-2. So he didn't really do a heck of a lot of work. Their next game is in Buffalo, and Koskinen gets pulled in that game, and in comes Al Montoya. And somehow the Islanders win one of the wildest games I have seen in a regular season in a long time. I remember where I was watching this, 7-6 in overtime.
Hesh taps it back to Sekera. On to Jochen Hesh, to Leopold, in over the line, the shot right on. Rebound is tipped off into the corner, but recovered by Leopold. Leopold trying to get away from Tavares, and he does with a shot, and Montoya launches himself on top of it.
Good job by Jochen Hesh to stand right in front of the goal. Grabs it before anybody could find it.
And the Islanders getting it back with just a little over 2 minutes to go in the OT period. Set up in the wing. And drilled through the middle and over the line. Here's Grabner walking in. He scores! Grabner stealing the puck away and firing it home. And the Islanders win it in overtime.
The puck bounced away from Sekera, who was in the right position to start with. But by the time he tried to recover, the fastest guy on either team, Grabner, scores to make it 3 goals for him tonight. And it was a bouncing puck that couldn't be controlled by Sekera, and you know the rest of the story.
Drew Stafford had a hat trick for the Sabres. Michael Grabner had a hat trick for the Islanders, including the overtime game winner. This is Al Montoya's introduction to Islanders fans.
That was the game when Ty Wishart scored his only goal, too, wasn't it?
Yes, he did. He did. This was an insane game, if you've never seen it.
This was an insane game, and I think that was also, Grabner was pretty quiet for the first half of the season, and then he went psycho mode in the second half. And I'm joking that I only saw that 3 times at this point, which was Palfi when Ziggy suddenly snapped and scored 48 goals. Then Grabner. And the other interesting thing about Al Montoya, and you just think about these subtle things. First of all, his most famous thing in professional hockey was getting beaten up by DiPietro. Part of the reason he's now an Islander is because DiPietro got beaten in a fight.
Yeah.
And got his face broken by Brent Johnson.
I hadn't thought about that. That's a good point.
So fights involving Rick DiPietro are basically Al Montoya's reason he had an NHL career at some point. And then the other thing that was very interesting is Sudsy Mirage, who was the Islanders' goaltending guru at the time, looks at Montoya in his first practice, I think, with the team, or within the first week, looks at him and says, "You're shaving your skates wrong. You're too on your heels." Shaves the skates a different way to have Montoya playing more on the balls of his feet. And suddenly it seems like you've got a useful NHL goaltender, just from the fact of he goes from playing back on his heels to playing up on the balls of his feet. And that's one of the things that I found so fascinating about Montoya is that first of all, that nobody else would notice this. And second of all, because no offense to Sudsy at all, but was the entire brain trust of the Gart Snow Islanders the best we could do? I think Sudsy is very good. I think he went to work for the Ducks after he left the Islanders. But
for a long time,
Sudsy definitely is someone who knew what he was talking about. He was definitely the master craftsman on some level. But to just think that shaving your skates a different way could make that much of a difference.
Well, this reminds me of the Mika Kiprasov story, where he was with the Sharks and he wasn't very good, and then he gets traded to Calgary for like nothing, and somebody realizes that it's not asthma, but it was like a weird breathing thing he was doing when he drank water. So he started using a straw from his water bottle, and all of a sudden he's like winning Vezina trophies. The Flames are going to the finals. Like, this whole thing changed how this guy's body worked in such a way that it made him one of the best goalies in the league for like a decade. And just from somebody going, something weird is happening when you're drinking water out of that old Gatorade bottle. Really? Here's a straw. Use that. It became a whole thing. So I didn't know that. That's pretty wild about the thing.
Yeah, it's crazy.
I don't want to move on from this Buffalo game.
We could do a whole series on this game.
I know. We should do a live stream of this game.
I remember, well, first of all, like the fact that this whole month, by the way, was just, we talked about it during the Michael Haley and maybe Zen and Konopka episodes, that all of a sudden there started to be a galvanizing spirit on this team.
Konopka and Ottawa screaming, "We're not doormats" at a bunch of TSN.
Yeah. So like, and that kind of stuff, and you kind of give it back to the Penguins, which were at the time, they bullied us, and so that felt good. And then the Sabres too, like the Islanders back then, like the Sabres this was, I believe, the second to last season that the Sabres made the playoffs before this current drought that they're in. Mm-hmm. And like, it just felt good. Like, even though these wins ended up not meaning anything in like the big picture, just seeing, the look on Jason Pominville or like Ryan Miller's face and like those guys who just drove us nuts for Jochen Hesch. Like, it was nice to beat these guys in a pretty crazy game, and it did feel like something was starting to brew. And I don't think that, I know this is his first game, but I don't think that Montoya's presence is just a footnote, because like this team was crying out for some stability in goal. And what I liked about him was like he the Islanders and Montoya were kind of at the same, like at a similar crossroads. Like
they needed each other.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. And I think it's funny too, because I remember Al Montoya was also partially responsible for one of the other running gags that mentioned my buddy earlier, Andrew. We ran this into the ground over the course of about a decade, because his second game, he also doesn't start. I think he relieved Lawson in a loss against the Bruins. And then he starts his first game for the Islanders against the Kings. Yeah. And I was in Vancouver visiting a friend before I went to an event in San Francisco. Just, wanted to see Vancouver. Beautiful city. Montoya, and I have no confidence in Montoya at this point. And we made all the Inigo Montoya jokes, prepare to lose. I am Al Montoya, but I remember I spent the whole day and I didn't think about that game because I was just afraid. I knew Montoya was starting. I was afraid. I didn't know what to do. And then I checked the score and I saw that the Islanders had won 3-0.
Yeah.
And that made me think that there might be something with Al Montoya, in addition to thinking there was something with this bonkers team that was developing a personality. But it also led to one of the classic quotes that my friend and I ran into the ground, which was Terry Murray, the former coach of the Kings, well known for the team immediately winning 2 cups when he was fired and replaced with Darryl Sutter. Right. I don't remember the exact quote, but he said something along the lines of, "It's easy when you're not playing for anything." And they asked Cappy about it, and Cappy's response was, "If it's so easy, they should have beaten us." And
he was capable of having a good soundbite every once in a while.
Absolutely. And my friend and I had that running gag where we called Terry Murray the arbiter after that. Where it was something like, I went out with this girl and I didn't know if it was a date or not. Somebody called Terry Murray to see if it counts.
That's funny.
And we joked around like that for almost a decade. Like, whenever it wasn't sure if something counted, we joked that we needed to reach out to Terry Murray.
that game against the Kings was his first and only shutout with the Islanders, and Matt Molson scored twice against his brother-in-law, Jonathan Quick. So there you go. Hopefully he falls apart sometime soon. But yeah, so now he's an Islander, and he goes on a little mini run here. He ends up picking up points. Yeah, he picks up points in like 7 out of 6 games or 7 out of 8 games, something like that. And the Islanders start creeping into sort of playoff dark horse territory. And it was improbable. Didn't seem like it was going to go anywhere, but you had hope, and you hope that if they could just keep it going, keep picking up points, maybe they can make it interesting. Of course, they didn't come anywhere near the playoffs, but a lot of that was due to Montoya just solidifying this goaltending position, which they had not really had all season long. And you're like, man, I wish they had traded for this guy earlier. And this is where my love for Montoya comes in, because already Garth Snow had success stories of picking up guys off the scrap heap. Molson, Parento, now Grabner, who again was inching close to a 30-goal season, which was also improbable on its own. And I thought, oh my God, is Al Montoya going to be the goalie equivalent to Matt Molson? Like the guy who just shows up and, all of a sudden becomes a productive first line player? Like that would be amazing. And the fact that he was a Ranger draft pick, the fact that he bounced around all these places, the fact that he's, a Cuban guy from Chicago, like this is just all awesome. I want to. He went
6-2-3 in the month of March.
Yeah. Like it was crazy.
That would be good for this team now.
Sure. Yeah, his
that
numbers
team
are good.
Sucked.
Yeah. but he was pushing it. Mike, do you remember I feel like this might be I might be looking at this through like blue and orange colored glasses, but I remember this playoff push being very real. And again, it was a dark horse thing. It was a long shot thing, but you thought, man, if they get this and these guys lose and they can make the playoffs, and it's all because of Al Montoya and Michael Grabner. And other guys are having good seasons too.
And Michael Haley bloodying Sean Avery.
Well, yeah, that's true too. But am I crazy, or was that real? Like this?
No, because it felt like they were tricking us into thinking something was happening.
Right.
And Montoya joining the party was what did it. Like it just completely changed the complexion of the team. And it felt like that there was like a more levity to them as well.
Yeah.
I love, as I said, I hated him because he was a Ranger draft pick, the fact that his, even though he ends up being a number 6 overall pick in a draft, and the Rangers still end up getting Henrik Lundqvist, right? Like all this stuff just that makes me hate this guy. And it took him 4 games to be oh my God, I actually am starting to see the beginning of a story here where we can almost shove him in Ranger fans' faces, which is all you're really asking for from as an Islander fan. And I'm starting to see it. Loved the look. His helmet was sick. He had the all white pads before they started to become trendy.
Yeah.
Great personality. He really just like Nick said earlier, these two, the team and Montoya needed each other at this time. And and just one more note about those pads. If you remember, back in this era, everybody had the same look, those same pads, those Reebok, they had diagonal lines from the bottom and then the other ones from the top. And so you didn't really see all that many goalies just wear the all white or all one color pads, and Montoya did. And I thought it was fun. It was cool because he was one of the first I can remember that did it. But that aside, it became a fun, nice, warm story, and the Islanders were looking for these. And even after he left, the Islanders saved his career, and I don't think that was lost on a lot of other players who ended up turnstiling in and out of the Islanders, because it's you know what, the Islanders might not be very good this year, but at least they'll give me a chance. And if it doesn't work out, whatever, if it doesn't work out with the Islanders, it's probably not going to work out with anybody at this point. But but if it does, there's players who I can look at and be, I can be the next Al Montoya or PA Parento or Zenon Konopka. All these guys who came in or even someone like Brad Boyce, like he comes in.
Yeah.
Did we
He's a
know?
coin.
Like,
Yeah.
just has a good productive season in the shortened year, and the Islanders kind of just breathe new life into these careers, and they certainly fill a role on the island, and Montoya was one of the first guys to do it, and he was so affable. Like,
Yes.
Dan, you talk about him all the time as one of your favorites ever, and
Yeah.
it's not an out there suggestion because of how kind of inviting a personality he was on a team that like just was still trying to figure out how to do that, how to both balance like being a professional hockey player and a normal human being, because the person that they were all counting on at the time to be the savior turned out to be just a robot.
Yeah, basically he was a cyborg. But yeah, no, Montoya, even to today, like he's a very, very intelligent dude, a charismatic guy. He's always smiling, he's always laughing. Again, like I said, he's the proud son of Cuban immigrants who left the country just after Castro took over. First they went to Canada, then they settled in Chicago. He's got that great Chicago accent. You almost think he's going to be talking about the Cubbies or sausages or something like that. Like he's got
Bears.
Yeah, the Bears. Yeah, exactly. Dutka, like that kind of stuff. And so he's just, again, a very pleasant, inviting person. We'll talk about his current job when we get to the end of the show. But like, yeah, I wanted this guy so badly to work out. And even though that season didn't end in the playoffs, everything looked like it was going to be trending in the right direction. Again, Grabner was a Calder Trophy finalist. They signed him to an extension. They signed Montoya to a 1-year extension towards the end of the year. I guess Capuano, got the job fully at some point, and it seemed like that was probably the right thing to do. Tavares had a good season. What do you have? 67 points. He had 67 points, 29 goals. Like Molson, another 30-goal season. Like this team seemed to be heading in every single right direction, and they even had
going to get Stripe back the next year.
You're going to get Stripe back. You're going to get a Poso back for the full season,
and maybe Evgeny Nabokov. You can't forget that. You can't forget that part of the goalie carousel was Evgeny Nabokov signs his contract. Detroit, and suddenly gets claimed by the Islanders and won't show up.
Right. So maybe he comes in. But the biggest thing that the Islanders have going for them, all this momentum is leading to something that doesn't take place on the ice, and something that our friend Nick knows very well. A public referendum on a new arena that is happening August 1st, 2011, that is going to signal a new era in Islanders hockey. All everybody has to do is kind of vote in the Islanders' favor, and they can start, using these sort of municipal bonds to build an arena. And I remember Grabner saying something at some time, being like, man, final Calder finalist, new contract, new arena's coming. Life is good.
They had Mike Motto talk about this in like the Borelli's parking lot.
Yeah. They had Blue Oyster Cult put on a concert, I think.
I was there. I was there wearing my More Cowbell t-shirt.
Yeah, there you go. So, it was a pretty wild time, and it looked like, again, this team was going to be going in the right direction. The arena vote failed. It is a very, very long story that Nick chronicled very, very intelligently and in a very, very detailed manner for many years.
That one. All I'm going to say is, I think it really did seem as simple with the arena referendum as neither party wanted the other party to get the credit for saving the Islanders, so nobody did it. It's literally, it's almost like what they tell you in CPR class, where, if there's an actual emergency, you don't say somebody call 911, you point to somebody, go, you call 911. Because all these politicians just never thought that the Islanders would actually have any leverage or leave or whatever. I mean, because I remember a poll that ran right before the referendum where it was like 70% saying the Islanders are worth saving. We should do the Nassau County should do everything in its power to keep them. But they didn't vote for the referendum.
Yeah, it was a weird time. It was August, which is a weird time to hold a vote for anything.
There was a terrible thunderstorm midday that knocked out the Long Island Railroad for like 2 hours. And I remember because I got stuck in the city. I got stuck in the city trying to get home. I had already voted in the morning, but I remember, and there were a lot of people, but I think I think, there was a lot of macro stuff going on at that point, and it was just, it was very weird because we had this bonkers team that potentially had some hope to it.
Right.
But it was also just the time when it felt like we couldn't focus on the team because there was so much else we had to do and so much else we had to deal with.
Yeah, and that's just how it works with the Islanders, obviously. I mean, Mike and I are always talking about the sort of distractions, and that stuff is largely gone. And in a way, whether or not the Lighthouse Project was the right move at the time, we wanted it because it was going to be the new arena. But ultimately, they got UBS Arena, so it all kinds of worked out. So we can kind of look back on this a little bit.
Yeah, it's still so funny. It's still so funny that, and I know you guys have said this, I'm not saying anything profound here. It's just so funny that all we wanted in those days was stability.
That's it.
And now, this team has too much stability.
They're so stable. Everybody wants to,
where it's like,
bring them up.
Yeah. Guys, I just meant I wanted a long-term arena. I didn't mean give Scott Mayfield a lifetime contract.
Hey, it's a real monkey paw situation, right?
It's genie rules, right? From Aladdin, a little bit of gray area in that wish. But
that's true.
I mean, Al Montoya really seemed like he was something. And then the crazy thing that really gave a lot of people hope for the goaltending the following season is that Nabokov agreed to come and play for the Islanders. After they told his contract.
Right. Somehow they convinced him to come over. And so the next season started with Nabokov and Montoya.
Nabokov making league minimum, too, because they told the contract that he signed with Detroit.
Yeah. And everything was humming until a game against Winnipeg, in which Montoya was collided into by Evander Kane. He ended up with a concussion.
Play goes on, and Bogosian will send Kane away. Evander Kane, number 4 overall in the draft in 2009, takes it to the net, and now we're going to get our first penalty of the game, and it's going to go to Kane, and Kane is not happy.
Well, Kane using his speed down the wall. This is what they wanted at him, chipping pucks, but right now, goalies are off limits, and it's hard here. We haven't seen the replay, whether he was forced in, but he goes right into Montoya here, and it doesn't look good.
And Stephen Wackham in a stare down with Evander Kane.
Oh, it's a great play by Kane. Uses his speed, chip to himself, he comes in, and he follows through right on top of Montoya.
He played after that, not immediately in that game, but I mean, he did come back after a while and play a little bit, but something was off. Something was definitely not right at the time. And it was a little bit sad. It was like, oh, really? I mean, this guy is clearly not right. I don't know, how they can fix this. He got hurt and then he came back about, a 3 weeks later or so. He got hurt in February, came back a few weeks later in March. And he just wasn't the same. And obviously the team, even with Nabokov and Montoya, just wasn't that good. I mean, they finished actually about the same as they had this season before. And so all of that goodwill and all that, and obviously the arena referendum had failed. And so all that goodwill from the summer before had completely evaporated. And it just seemed like, once again, we weren't going anywhere.
It was another case of the way an Islander season is going to be terrible is that there's some hope in the off season and some good feelings, and everything feels warm and fuzzy in the off season,
right?
Because this team, it certainly wasn't the 11-12 Islanders certainly weren't an intimidating roster on paper, but
absolutely not.
They were. You thought, okay, we got this guy who they took first overall in 2009 instead of Victor Hedman. He could be something. And then, Molson was working out. Grabner had a great first season.
Yeah.
Parenteau looked like a perfect third piece to that first line. Franz Nielsen and they needed Oposo and Bailey.
Grabner went on one of the great goaltenders of all time. 11-12, it's very funny. I have no recollection of this team. It left no imprint on me whatsoever. And I mean, I basically remember Marty Reasoner, current BU head coach Jay Pandolfo, and Nino Niederreiter.
This is the
infamous world's worst line.
Yep.
The three of them together, I mean, I just have to read this out. I know you know, but my God. The three of them together played a total of, what is that, 117 plus that. So they played a total between the three of them, 179 games. 3 goals and 7 assists.
Yeah, it's bad. It was bad. Nino went 1 goal, 0 assists in 55 games.
It's so hard to do that. It's so hard to do that. And you wonder why the Islanders' fourth line now has stuck together for a decade. It's because everybody had PTSD from this, right? Like trust us. It's just let's let these three guys play themselves in out of through play their career out together, because the biggest fear here is that we go back to Reasoner, Niederreiter, and Pandolfo. And I mean, this team was full. Like I said, there was some oomph to it, and you thought if things broke their way, if Bailey took a step forward, Oposo took a step forward, hey, the Brian Ralston move worked out. If guy like the defense looked okay on paper with
I mean, Tavares and Molson both scored 30 goals at you. Like that.
Tavares
was at 36
goals.
Yeah.
Tavares was point at 67 points.
Yeah, I mean, they ticked enough boxes, but the boxes they didn't tick were so glaringly bad that it just wrecked everything. And it was. It's funny that you say this season didn't leave an impact on you, because as a fan, because for me it did. And what I think that the prevailing lesson from this team is this season to me was that just never to expect anything in hockey to be linear.
Yeah, I mean, you had Blake Como in 2010-11. I mean, he scored 24 goals, and then he ends up lost on waivers to the Flames the next season after no points in 16 games.
Oh man, people were so mad. They were so mad that they put him on waivers.
We thought that Rob Schremp might have been something, and then he gets waived to the Thrashers in 2010-11, and then he's out of the league after that. It's just crazy how that goes. And I mean, Al Montoya, for his 921 save percentage that he put up with the Islanders in 2010-11, he plays 31 games in 11-12, and definitely not as good a season. He's got 893 save percentage, 311 goals against average, and I mean, Nabokov had a 913 save percentage and a 2.55 goals against. So it's not like this was the defense optional Doug Waite years, but Montoya Montoya never quite recaptured the magic of that first season. But I mean, he parlayed it into a deal with Winnipeg. He played for Florida, Montreal, and Edmonton after that. I mean, his last game in the NHL was in the 2017-18 season. He
hung around for a while.
He stuck it.
He went from a guy who might have hung it up at that point. Just seemed like he was nearing the end of the road. He gets a sympathy trade to the Islanders, and then he gets a little nice career for himself out of it.
Absolutely.
You can't really say that's a bad thing, all because of a different DiPietro fight and Sudsy Mirage shaving his skates slightly differently.
That's crazy. But yeah, even before the concussion, that season really wasn't going well. And like you said, after the season was over, they had only signed him to a 1-year deal. So he was a UFA at the end of the 2012 season. Of course, then the lockout happens. And so there's no season until January of 2013. And by that point, he's already signed with Winnipeg, which is ironic considering that's where he got hurt, or that's the team against which he got hurt the year before. Ends up playing 7 games, going 5-3-1 with them that year, and he plays for Winnipeg the next year. And then, like you said, he starts the tour, 2 seasons in Florida, season and a half in Montreal. He gets traded to Edmonton, and I completely forgot about that Edmonton time period. And there's a ton of videos on YouTube of like post-game interviews with him, in the Oilers, with the Oilers, because this may come as a great shock to you, but the Oilers were looking for goaltending back then, and they thought that Al Montoya could stabilize it after his time, and they thought maybe he was going to be some found money, much like the Islanders thought he was going to be found money. So he ends up finishing his Islanders career with 51 games, 18 wins, 16 losses, 10 ties, a .905 save percentage, 282 goals against average, and the one shutout we talked about. His numbers would be pretty good with Winnipeg. He went 16-9 with a .916 goals against average and 3 shutouts. That they were a much better defensive team, certainly than the Islanders were. And in case you're like, wow, was Montoya and Connor Hellebuck? No, this was the Andre Pavlik.
Andre Pavlectric.
Talk about that.
That was Pavlectric.
That's right. Talk about that goaltending battery. But he ended up playing. So he played the most games with the Islanders, but second most was with Florida. Played 45 games for the Panthers, went 18-14-5. This is again the kind of early Panthers years. He was the backup, I guess, on that Panthers team that the Islanders beat in overtime in the playoffs that year,
and had a decent year.
Yeah, he did. He's like you said. I mean, he parlayed that trade to the Islanders, in which again Don Maloney said, "I'm doing this as a favor to Al." Literally,
I think he traded like a 6th round pick in 2 years.
Yeah.
I think the Islanders got him for like a 6th round pick 2 years from then.
Something like that.
Was basically like, we're giving this guy away.
Right. Yeah. It was nothing. It was just to get him.
We needed a body, and he's a body.
Well, and Maloney was like, this guy deserves to play. Like, he's been such a loyal player for us for so long, and he's been toiling away in the minors. He deserves a shot at the NHL, and he got it, and he ended up getting a 9-year NHL career out of it. And I mean, he finished all, like you said, in the 17-18 season, 168 games played, 67 wins, 49 losses, 24 ties. I mean, and a .908 save percentage for his career. I mean, that's a good career. Like, most guys don't get that many games, 168 games. He's got more wins than losses, pretty okay save percentage. Like, that's a good career for a guy who can get a spot. Sure.
This is part of, as I said, this is why Al Montoya fascinated me so much, is because, like, he cuts his skates slightly differently.
Yeah.
The Islanders just get this like almost slapstick series of injuries to their goalies.
Right.
And, Don Maloney just steps up saying, we need a body. Hey, I've got a body. And then from there he plays, he'd only had 5 NHL games, and from there he gets 163 games in the NHL.
And it's safe to say this is the last good thing that Don Maloney ever did for the Islanders. Only. Maybe the only. I don't know. He probably did some good things.
Who made the Turgeon trade? No.
Yeah, exactly. Well, yeah, his bad. That's true. Yeah.
It was very bittersweet just going by the Hockey Hall of Fame and seeing Turgeon honored. It was my first favorite player. I was really happy about that.
That's cool.
I got to dunk on the Leafs during my client meetings, so that was good. And also a joke, because I went down to get breakfast in my hotel in Toronto wearing an Islanders shirt. I get my breakfast and I turn around to find a guy in a Rangers hoodie standing behind me.
Nah. Can't escape these.
And people. I just looked at him and said, "Really, even here?" And then we both laughed and went our separate ways.
We should mention a man named Andrew Fritsch, who was the guy who the Coyotes used that 6th round pick to draft in the 2011 entry draft. So that he did not play in the NHL. He played for Niagara, the Sioux Greyhounds. Maybe those were Kyle Dubas's Sioux Greyhounds.
Do you think he knew Kyle Dubas? Should we ask him about Kyle Dubas's genius?
No, I think we've heard enough about Kyle Dubas already. But we will talk about, though, a current NHL team, the Dallas Stars, who Al Montoya currently works for as their director of community outreach. Again, Al is a very, very proud Cuban American, and the Stars have a Mexican community down there in Dallas and a big Latino community that they want to reach, and they have found the right man for the job. Because if Al Montoya was talking to me about going to a hockey game, by God, I'm going, because I want to hear what this guy has to say. And he's done a ton of interviews, and it's great. Like, this is a guy who, again, highly intelligent, highly motivated, highly charismatic. I'm glad to see him here. I'm glad he was at Islanders Alumni Day a couple of years ago, although it was funny when they put out the tweet. It was like Alvaro Montoya. and people are like, who the hell is Alvaro Montoya? What happened to Al? So he loved playing for the Islanders, from what I can find out, and I'm glad to see him around. I hope he gets a look at the arena that was so close to being theirs when he was an Islander. Who knows what would have happened had they gotten that arena? But I hope he has good memories of playing for the Islanders, because again, this was a guy. I don't know. I just wish I could just hang out with him. I don't know how many other Islanders would be on that list of guys that I just kind of want to chill with and ask
for
stories.
Sure.
Al Montoya's on the list for sure.
He seems like he'd be a fun guy to hang out with. It seems like he's probably got some stories about rats in the Coliseum.
I can imagine,
like everybody does.
And if he actually does manage to get an outdoor NHL game in Mexico City, he's going to be a legend. He could be the next commissioner, if you ask me. That he get my vote. That's what I say.
I mean, anybody. Awesome. I had a meeting in the building in Manhattan West where the NHL is now, and I was like, what if I just stood outside and waited for Gary Bettman to leave?
I don't know if it works that way.
It doesn't. He probably wasn't
detail
there.
Of security guards. But yeah, this has been a fun ride down memory lane for one of my favorite players. Thank you so much, Nick, for
no
for
problem.
Like
I said, just endlessly fascinating about these little things that could change everything. Sudsy never notices the skates. Kevin Pullen never hits a divot in the ice.
Right.
Who knows where DiPietro doesn't try to fight someone 4 inches taller than him in a 4-0 game.
Yeah.
So many different things had to happen for Al Montoya to even end up on this team.
Right. The Al Montoya butterfly effect.
Just good for him for taking advantage of it. And
Absolutely.
good for him for making a career out of it, because you have to imagine someone who's been in the A that long was probably pressing, probably wondering where his next contract's going to come from.
Sure.
He might have ended up in Europe at that point.
Yeah.
You never know.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's true. But this has been great, Nick. I hope you had a lot of fun, and maybe we'll make it.
I appreciate it, guys.
Thank you. Michael Leboff, where can everybody find you on Twitter?
The Big Lebowski with 2 E's.
Follow Mike at the Big Lebowski. Read and listen to his work at Action Network. Any final thoughts on Al Montoya, the 2010-2011 insane New York Islanders? I don't know. Michael Grabner's Calder Trophy season.
Just remember, the NHL is a garage league.
Right.
Yes.
The team that retaliates fails to control its players, but the team whose player leaves the bench did not fail to control its players.
Right.
And screw Matt Cook.
Yeah, basically. Having Matt Cook on your team is good. Yeah.
Yeah. No, it's as Nick said earlier in the episode, this is a theme on Islanders anxiety the past 2 years is that we're a fan base that every the top of our wish list every day of our sporting lives has been just stability. And there was a brief moment where Al Montoya kind of became the beacon of stability against all odds.
Seriously.
And it lasted 2 seasons, which really tells you where the Islanders were some 13 years ago. And
find Terry Murray and ask him if that stability really counted.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Seriously. But that's a perfect way to put it. There was a point in which Al Montoya, the man who could not get a job to save his life in the NHL, represented the most stable chance the Islanders had in the crease. And it was crazy. It was a crazy time. We still love Al to this day. Can't wait to see what he does with the Stars and their community outreach program. And we're glad he was here. I'm glad I was able to watch it. This was a lot of fun.
And I will say selfishly, I hope that the 2010-11 season will remain the most bonkers Islanders season I've ever watched.
Yes, please.
Because
don't make them any more
that was a level of circus that I don't think that I can handle at this point.
we're way too old. We're way too old for that point yet. But yeah, no, definitely. The first UBS Arena season came close, but let's not get too crazy. Okay. Thanks everybody for listening. Sign up at patreon.com/Islanders Anxiety for ad-free episodes, and bonus content. Follow us on Twitter at Isles Anxiety Pod. Leave us a review on Apple Podcasts and at Spotify. We really appreciate it. And a reminder that our first ever live event will be Saturday, March 30th at 4 p.m. at the beautiful brand new Offside Tavern in New York City. Around 4:45 or so, we'll start to record a live podcast that will be all about your Weird Islanders stories. So bring your Weird Islanders jerseys, t-shirts, swag, whatever you got, because we want to hear about it. That is Saturday, March 30th at Offside Tavern. Be there. It's going to be a great time. Our theme song is Knuckles by Bjorn Falk. Listen to more of his music on Bandcamp and Spotify as well. Read Lighthouse Hockey every single day. Islanders Anxiety Podcasts are part of the Fans First Sports Network. Find more at fansfirstsports.com and shop vintageIceHockey.com. Try wines from the Pinot Project. And we will talk to you next time with another Weird Islander. Until then, keep the Islanders weird. Take care. We'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.